it. I've read some of it, and it's fine.
They say economic impact is devastating.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
You don't believe it?
No, I don't believe it. And here's the other thing. You're going to have China and Japan and all of Asia and all of these other countries, addresses our country. Right now, we're at the cleanest we've ever been, and that's very important to me. But if we're clean, but every other place on earth is dirty, that's not so good.
Despite President Trump's skepticism, the facts are clear. Man-made climate change poses a dire threat to the future of humanity and our planet, and its effects are being felt as we speak. But what exactly is the nature of that threat, and who suffers most from its effects? Our Aaron Pellman has more.
Thanks, Jonah. We're here in Baltimore talking with college students about climate change and development, and we found one willing to speak with us. Hi, where are you from?
Baltimore.
And how important do you think climate change is as an issue?
Oh, it's super important.
Do you think it's affected you here in Baltimore and in the United States?
Yeah, totally, man. I don't know, I was out skiing in Colorado last spring, and season's a lot shorter now. And also I read on the I forget what news site it was, but it's affecting farmers in Ohio. So it's definitely a big thing.
Mm-hmm. And what would you like to see done about climate change?
I think Trump should really needs to work a lot harder. He shouldn't have gotten rid of the climate accord or the Paris Climate Accord. That was a bad idea, and I think Scott Pruitt was bad too. He was affiliated with oil industry or something. So he needs to pick better administrators. So the U.S. needs to take more responsibility, more of a global lead in development in the world. I think, yeah.
All right, thank you very much for speaking with us.
All right, sure, man.
Great. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Sammy. I am a student here at Johns Hopkins. I came from, born and raised actually in Eastern Ethiopia.
Great. And have you been able to see the effects of climate change?
In comparison, not so much actually. A lot of what I've seen has been maybe a lot of references to a big doomsday, some period in 2030, 2050, where back home or other international students, other friends of mine telling me about where we see a lot of the same spaces where development is actually happening. There are a lot of changes in terms of nomadic lifestyles, agriculture, the yields are rapidly reducing. It's almost as if we're living in two different worlds, and a lot of the rhetoric here I find is along those lines.
Great. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Aaron. Now with me to discuss this issue further, we have William Schillian, a professor at Johns Hopkins University. We have Robbie William, a representative for La Via Campesina. We have Nicholas E. Haley, the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. And last and least, Carl Tuggerson of Fox News.
This is an apple. Some people might try to tell you that it's a banana. They might scream banana, banana, banana over and over and over again. They might put banana in all caps. You might even start to believe that this is a banana. But it's not. This is an apple.
Our first question, can the new liberal development agenda be the solution for climate change? Discuss.
Climate change cannot be solved through the capitalist development mechanisms and a liberal international order that have created the conditions for climate change to occur in the first place.
I really have to disagree on that, actually. The market is the best way to produce creative, innovative solutions to the problems introduced by climate change. We have to trust in the markets. There's really no sense in asking any country to unilaterally work against our interest. We have to rely on the market, trust in the invisible hand. It will deliver what we need.
But countries in the global south are acting on different deadlines for action. Consider low-lying nations who are already at risk for their entire nation submerging under rising sea levels. They do not have time to wait for innovation.
They may not have time, but neither do we. Yes, we have a responsibility to the other nations of this world, but first and foremost, we have a responsibility to our own citizens, who we've been put into power to protect the interests of. And uprooting our entire economy because some scientists tell scary campfire stories isn't the way to protect those interests. Furthermore, our economic interests are the world's economic interests. Both India and China are some of the world's biggest economies now, and they've done so by using millions and billions of dollars of our developmental aids. Do our needs not deserve as much consideration as those from the countries that you say will be so affected by climate change?
You're failing to consider, however, how your actions in pursuit of your own interests are affecting the livelihood of other nations. The call for 1.5 to stay alive could unfortunately be a dying breath of these countries, considering that the market economy and climate governance have not produced effective results in legislation to reduce global emissions, and predictions for warming are well over the 1.5 mark. The Paris Agreement works on voluntary emission reductions, which give little certainty, and however, forcing countries to reduce emissions by a certain quantity or percentage has historically been difficult.
Exactly. In fact, the failure of the Kyoto Protocol was greatly influenced by the United States' failure to ratify, showing once more how the power and resources of the global north has put its counterpart in a dangerous position.
I think it's important to point out here, though, that the U.S. remains committed to sustainable development in combating climate change. Even if we are not necessarily signators to the Paris Climate Accords, and if we didn't go on with the Kyoto Protocol, the U.S. continues to donate far more to development and sustainable environmental development than any other country in the world.
All right, you seem to have hit a nerve here on these differentiations and responsibilities.
The burden shouldn't fall on the United States, is all I'm saying.
I think we should discuss this further. Clearly,
Yes.
there's a difference between the global north and global south when it comes to these issues. If you guys would like to go into that more, that'd be great.
It consumes fear, self-doubt, and weakness. It stands ready to protect those in danger. And to fight whatever shape the battle takes. Because as long as there are battles, there will always be development.
Yes, well, economic fluctuations may have a global impact, but the thing is, even though the actions in one region can cause global consequences, the scale of these consequences is determined by the unique combinations of other factors that make the global south much more vulnerable to its effects.
For example, the South is still being exploited for its land for agricultural purposes to feed the world that already has enough food to feed itself.
Development has pushed a specific kind of agriculture and industry that is unsustainable and damages the climate, and it is not plausible for the global south as a mechanism to progress due to the consequences of the global north and its misuse of these mechanisms. Recreating the north in the south has been a northern goal that has been pushed onto developing nations. This is still occurring despite the lack of resources to do so, as they have been used up by the north. It's an impossible mission with the success and survival of each nation at stake.
Take this one.
I think imposing the idea that the North somehow wants to reproduce itself in the South is really just going a little bit too far. I think the important thing to focus on here is that agriculture industry really is meant to produce greater food security, and even though certain aspects of agricultural industry might be adjusted to be more sustainable, as the underlying technology gets better, it can be a tool to provide more food in a more sustainable way to more people.
Mr. Wheeling, you are the expert in this field. Would you like to discuss?
Sure. So climate change also acts as a threat multiplier, meaning for regions that are already prone to violence, climate change will exacerbate their issues and unstable power relations. An example of this is the connection between food price inflation and riots in the Middle East and Northern Africa.
Thank you. We're running out of time, so let's just get to our last point, which is the role of international organizations in mediating development efforts, and especially how those efforts affect countries in the Global South, such as the Caribbean. I think I would like to discuss.
Yes, I'd like to say something. The disproportionate political power and representation on the world stage leads to the pursuit of northern interests and an amplification of the inferior economic position that the South is stuck in.
So countries, for example, Caribbean nations, have the little capacity to fund government programs to combat climate change because of their accumulating debt as a result of unequal global distributions of health.
Yeah, but to your point about Caribbean nations, that's the reason that we have multilateral institutions such as the United Nations, so that Caribbean nations, smaller nations, are provided with a forum with which to voice their opinions. The fact of the matter is, small Caribbean nations can't drive the world economy. Only countries like the United States and the OECD can do that. But the United Nations still gives those nations an opportunity to voice their opinions and to put forth their ideas about how development should look. Furthermore, allowing these small nations to govern themselves autonomously has led to multiple migrant crises worldwide. It's been the northern countries like the United States that have had to deal with these crises over and over again.
So first, the UN was created by the OECD and for the OECD, and historically has been too worked up in the conflicting interests of permanent members, abusing their veto power and acting unilaterally. It would be absurd to think that the developing nations actually get a representative voice.
Absurd! The South's outlet to voice concern has little to no impact, and the fact of the matter is that the South is heavily economically dependent on the North. To your point about the migrant crisis, the massive amounts of migrant workers shipped from southern to northern countries severely impacts the economic and general well-being of southern nations, and further contributes to the disproportionate global distribution of wealth.
I would take a breath there, though. Just remember that it also does impact the North's economic development as well.
Exactly.
We understand that colonialism, which sure was a thing in the past, but I think we're by and large past now. Parties now recognize other countries' sovereign borders. We've established that. That being said, there are some issues of self-independence on northern capital and resources, but we in the North, particularly through the United States, in the Trump administration, is working very hard to make sure that there's a redistribution of responsibility throughout multilateral institutions. As we speak, Gary Cohn is convening senior climate and energy ministers from dozens of nations in advance of the United Nations General Assembly meeting next week.
Yeah, I agree completely. This White House, which Nick is here representing today, has demonstrated an undeniable commitment to respecting the needs and voices of the less fortunate in this world. I myself have absolute faith in the ability of this administration to solve all the problems that we've discussed here tonight and make climate change a thing of the past.
All right, guys, well, thank you for that. That was great. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you to our viewers. Now let's take it back to the studio. Jonah?